Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. This is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. Thanks for joining us. I'm Peter Ndoro and this is what's coming up on the show today. A report by Southern African women's rights organisation Gender Links was released this past week and it depicts gender parity in the media. We'll be talking to Gender Links a bit more on the study and can the President Ramaphosa save the media? That's a big question and we'll find out during the course of the show if he can indeed, and we'll be sitting down with a media analyst, data analyst who will unpack that for us. And you can also be part of this program. You can share your thoughts with us on the swirling speculation around the media about who might be the next deputy president. Let us know what you think, and our Twitter handle is @SAMediaMonitor. Now, as usual, we get our guests to unpack the Sunday papers and they'll help us wade through some of these stories that we're tackling. But first, let's take a look at the front page of your Sunday newspapers this morning. So the Sunday Times headline story you can see here, the cat corners Cyril. Now this refers to Deputy President David Mabuza, who had an urgent meeting with the ANC's Integrity Commission on Friday evening to challenge its report questioning his integrity. The paper says that President Ramaphosa is also challenged about what to do regarding trusted leaders Gwede Mantashe and Pravin Gordhan. The City Press is also leading with ANC Deputy President David Mabuza, saying that following an urgent meeting of the Integrity Commission, Mr. Mabuza will be returning to office as the country's Deputy President and will be among a radically reduced cabinet that goes from 72 people down to just 32. The Sunday Independent has a similar story on its front page, saying that the cat fights back. Deputy President Mabuza apparently has fought back, saying that the ANC's Integrity Commission relied on media reports and hearsay when compiling its report on him. The Sunday Tribune, the President Ramaphosa's inauguration is the lead story on the front pages of that paper, with a pledge that he made to free South Africa from poverty by aiming to forge a compact for free and equal patriots. In his inauguration speech, the President set out the mission to end poverty within a generation. Now, the Weekend Argus's front page leads with the question, what is President Ramaphosa's next move? This referring to the imminent announcement of his cabinet. Now, the paper suggests that he'll face opposition from within his party as he tries to purge government of corruption. Well, as you can see, there's so much to get through on the show this morning, and helping us to make sense of these stories, my guest editors today are Ntswaki Shweshwe Qu, who's a broadcast journalist at Kaya FM, and Nkateko Mongwe, who's a freelance journalist and media data analyst. So very good morning to my guests. Looking forward to chatting to them in a few moments' time. But first, Southern African women's rights organisation Gender Links has this past week released a report which shows that there's no gender equality in the media profession. According to the report, titled Gender, Diversity and Gender-Based Violence in South African Television, women are still not being seen and heard as much as their male counterparts. The misrepresentation shows that there's an urgent need to achieve greater diversity and balance in the media.
Gender Link says women are not seen or heard as much as their male counterparts. It has found that women's voices in television news rose to 39% last year from 25% in 2015. But male voices still dominate.
Part of the reason why you will constantly see in the media a male figure, perhaps, in front of a news camera, giving the comment for a particular department, is possibly because of who is available at a point in time.
And deadlines?
Deadlines are one of the driving factors about this, and so whoever can be available to answer on behalf of government, that will be the person that we go to.
The voices of women in politics and economics were also very faint, at just over 30%. Critics say the media in South Africa is failing to level the playing field for women.
We plagued in the media space by the same issues that we plagued in broader society. And that is that with all of the stereotyping and the socialization process, women are less confident than men. Why are there less women spokespeople? Because women push men forward. Aside from all of the other causes that we've identified. So I think that's one of the things we've got to work on.
Gender Link says women are better represented in the entertainment industry, but it comes at a price.
By the time I left Generations, I probably kissed 7 men on that show. I was very uncomfortable. I had found ways to kiss around the mouth that, people sitting at home can't even see that I'm not kissing. And I just thought, I cannot wake up every morning and be thinking about how to kiss in a manner that I'm not kissing. This is not the kind of society I want to be a part of. We have high HIV prevalence, and here we are showing young girls that are at the time idolized, being promiscuous on television.
Meanwhile, Gender Link says that there is little to no representation in the media for gender non-confirming individuals. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, we're pleased to welcome Kubirama, who's an advisor at Gender Links, who joins us now on the line. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Take us through this report. It's quite concerning, your findings. Perhaps let's start with why you thought to look into this in the first place.
I think we all agree that gender-based violence is one of the most difficult and prevalent issues of our time. We do need to address it as a matter of urgency. So the study, which was together with the German Development Corporation and UN Women, looked at the coverage of gender-based violence in television news, children's programming, as well as entertainment. I think it was quite unusual in that regard because most monitoring we've done has focused on news. And from the period of the 25th of November to the end of January 2019, 1,462 news items and episodes were monitored. And I think the scary part in all of that only 2% of TV news items and 7% of children's programming and 16% of entertainment even made reference to gender-based violence. Now, the difficulty is, if you look at that, actually, to correct myself, it was these stories were all blatant stereotypes of gender-based violence. And just to be clear, that period did include the 16 days.
All right, so, if you say 2%, I guess people automatically will think, what would have been a fairer representation in terms of the amount of coverage that gender-based violence should have gotten in that period that you looked at?
I think not even during that period. It's just a question of what are we prioritizing as news, or what are we putting into the entertainment so that entertainment, it is the SABC, should be edutainment. Just given the levels of gender-based violence that we're dealing with, surely it has to have quite quite a big focus in terms of what we're covering. But again, we see it in the elections as well. So issues of gender and gender-based violence hardly featured. And I think it's about changing our mindset. What is it that's important and topical, and the way we're reporting these things.
All right, we'll talk about the way it's covered, but I'm curious about how do we come to an amount? If I'm sitting as an editor in the newsroom, what do I say? Do I say 20% should be stories about gender-based violence, or Does it happen based on stories that are coming through? Help us, guide us.
Yeah, well, that's a very important question. How do you determine what's important? And that, I think, is a very critical question for newsrooms and programmers and producers to ask themselves. Because right now, clearly the thing that features most highly on the agenda is the inauguration, election results, etc., etc. But at the same time, you have people going to court, you have people being abducted. I think the problem we're facing today is that we've normalized these things. It's no longer newsworthy. And the proportion is not, it's not so much about the proportion, but about keeping the issues on the agenda and making sure we're holding people accountable.
Yeah.
So if we know of a story, for example, that should be going to court and then doesn't make it, we need to ask questions about why.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about how it's covered and how the story is told. So let's start with the television shows, the programs, not the news. Are they not understanding what the issues are? Are they not explaining it properly? What were some of the shortcomings?
Well, let's put it this way. The worst offenders were the soap operas, where, women are much of the time portrayed as weak, submissive women, or the femme fatale, the evil wrongdoer. But, there's opportunity within those soap operas to really surface important issues around gender-based violence. So there is one soap opera, The Queen, which had a scene where a young woman is very depressed about the fact that she's being forced to marry a man that she just cannot stand. Mm-hmm. And the real reason for that, is she shares with a friend, is that he raped her.
Right. Right.
And I think what's very important about that particular example is that it focuses us on most rape is not with a stranger. It's someone you know, someone in the family. And I think it surfaces those issues in quite a strong way.
Okay. We're running out of time, so perhaps as a final question, let's talk about the news and the media. What were you finding were some of the problems associated with us getting it right in terms of telling the story and getting the right voices heard in talking about gender-based violence?
Okay, I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is, who's an expert? Because we often say we interview men and we interview spokespeople because we have to go to the expert. But the expert on any matter of gender-based violence is the person who's lived it, who's experienced it. It may not be the survivor in that particular case, but it could be another survivor who's experienced similar issues. And then I also heard, reference made to the fact that, women, most spokespeople are men, and women aren't really confident to speak out. Are we really going to use the same old excuses in the 21st century? I think there is, something about journalists being a little more rigorous, finding the sources, not just relying on who's available at any given time.
Right. Okay. All right. Kobe, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for the work that you've done on this report and bringing this to our attention, particularly as the media. Let's just hope that the penny drops and that conversations start to change going forward. But thanks so much indeed for your insights.
Thank you.
All right, let's continue with this conversation now with my guests. One a journalist, one a media analyst, and see what their thoughts are. I mean, it is a difficult one, isn't it? And I'm going to start with you, Shrisha, because you're a woman and you're a journalist, and you're being accused by this report that you're getting the wrong voices and not doing enough stories on gender-based violence. What's your initial take on that?
What we need to consider is that gender-based violence and issues around women are competing with other events that are happening around the country and around the globe. We're talking about President Cyril Ramaphosa and the cabinet that needs to be appointed. And then we also need to take into consideration some of these stories. So while I will not say that the report is completely wrong, what I'd say is that there's other elements that we need to consider when we're deciding on stories and which story to put on and which one to follow up on. I do agree that perhaps we can do a lot more follow-up on stories instead of just reporting them as events and then we move on to the next event. But the reality is that we do cover issues around gender-based violence, and we do try to find women voices. However, the spaces and the media is a microcosm of our society as a whole. You do have a lot of male voices. You do have a lot of men that are spokespeople. You do have a lot of ministers that are also men. So when you need to bring a voice of authority on a particular subject, you need to take into consideration all those elements in that who do I go for? And if that one woman who can be a voice of authority is not available, where's the next person? So I think for us to be able to tackle this problem of gender representation and equity just in the media, we have to also address it in our society as a whole.
And I guess the challenge with these kinds of stories, because it happens so often, it is almost, as she said, normalized, and then we tend to just follow when it happens to celebrities like Mampintsha and Babes Wodumo, and that the ordinary person next door we don't talk about.
Yes, it's part of society.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it's that most companies that are publishers and media owners, male dominance represents from the higher levels, from the executive positions. So it becomes a problem when you have to produce that kind of content, because it's a don't touch kind of content, which will reflect the male issues in society. Because I mean, the story of Mampintsha and Babes Wodumo, most men felt very bad when he did that. Now, as an executive, male executive, you don't want such stories released on your media.
Yeah. See. It is a tough one. I mean, I was just, as she was talking, I kept on asking, how much must we cover? You know, it's not even just competing. Because we know it's there, we know it's a prevalent thing, could there be a figure of 30, 40%, or I don't know? I mean, it's hard to gauge, isn't it?
It will be very hard to gauge, and I suppose in a study you are quantifying it in that you're looking at numbers. However, I think for us as broadcasters and as journalists, we just have to make an effort. And I want to disagree with the point that Nkatek was making in that media houses where male or men are dominant do tend to have a sort of like, let's not touch that story. I don't think that's largely true, because in a media house, decisions aren't made by one person. Even when you're an editor, there's a lot of engagement within the team on the stories that you need to cover. I think sometimes it's just the issue of interest. Does this speak to the audiences that we speak into? While the story next door of a child who's brutally raped and murdered is one that's very important, if it happens in Soweto, sometimes it doesn't get to the mainstream media, it doesn't get to the journalists at the SABC, which means that the public and the community as a whole also needs to play a very active role in saying, this has happened, we need to inform the journalists, we need to get someone involved to put this on the spotlight.
But the fact is, there's only 24 hours in the day. We cannot possibly tell all the stories.
Certainly, which goes back to the point, Peter, that I'd like to say that I think we need to broaden the media spectrum. We need more media channels. We need more radio stations and TV stations. However, we must also not forget that we do have platforms like community radio stations where, while the mainstream media might miss some of the stories, they might be covered by some of the community radio stations that we have, or community newspapers. So we should definitely advocate for media diversity, more voices and more representation in the media spaces. However, even with the limited 24 hours we have, I think there's opportunities for us to definitely do more.
Nkateko, I think the other thing that we might be guilty of, and I've seen it myself, Sometimes I think producers, journalists are quite lazy. There's a short list of experts that we always go to.
Yeah.
And we hardly ever look around and get new voices. So do you think that that could be contributing to this lack of voice?
Lack of talent, lack of voice. If we have more talent in the industry, there'll be more voices. And there'll be a broader spectrum of quality produced. So it's not only just going to the same people, it's going to the trusted people that you know will deliver a good content. But if you have more of those talented people that deliver good content with more media owners, community radio stations and community publishers, if we can open up that market, that gap, right, it could also help the economy. As I talk about that in my article that I have, can Zero save media? What I basically say is...
We're going to talk about that right after the break, so pause for a moment. Okay. Stay with us because Media Monitor will be back just now. And the big question that we're asking is, can President Cyril Ramaphosa, well, yesterday he says he's going to try and end poverty within a generation, but can he save us, the media? Find out after this.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
The Now Post Lifestyle reporter.
We are told that some of them were nabbed by IEC officials whilst trying to vote for a second time.
That date, June 24th, is significant. It comes just before the G20 meeting taking place in Osaka, Japan.
This is an unprecedented joint inquiry by the Human Rights Commission as well as the Public Protector's Office.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, yesterday we saw President Ramaphosa be inaugurated as the 5th president of South Africa, and he has a massive in tray of things to deal with. Well, the question that we're putting to him is, can this newly elected president save the media industry in South Africa and help us address the critical issues embedded within? Well, those are the words of Nkateko Mongwe, who's one of my guests this evening. He wrote an interesting article looking at this. Let's chat to him now about his thoughts. All right, so it was an interesting question that you raised, and I'm wondering, why were you looking to him in the first place?
Because he's the newly elected president of South Africa, and South Africa has critical issues. I mean, 55% of the youth are unemployed, to mention. And according to a Bloomberg study, South Africa is one of the most depressed countries in the world, second to Venezuela. We are an equal economy. We have two sides of South Africa, the rich have nots and the really, really poor. So I'm asking questions if we can save our industry, which is in critical situations. Ad spend is only increasing by 2.8%, which year on year is a decrease by 1.1%, according to Nielsen ad spend. So, and if the media industry is part of the macro economy of South Africa, right? It's the voices that people get to see and hear. So if marketers are spending on media, there'll be less voices.
But the question I'm asking you now, is it that they're not spending on media or they're just spending on different media?
It's following the consumer. So the media is not dead. Media is not dying. It's just that consumers are changing their media consumption habits.
Right.
They're accessing media differently.
Yes.
Than they used to. So OpenHT OTT increasing viewers that didn't have certain channels now get those channels for free. It changes the consumption of media and how media is consumed. So in my article, I'm asking the president if he can actually save our industry from three critical issues. The issues are the media buying strategy and planning, which is mostly now going to be done by auditing companies.
Yeah.
So that affects the revenues that SABC would make and market choice and etc.
So the question
affect,
is, and people are saying, hang on, you know, we can't save you from yourself if you guys are not moving with the times. Shouldn't the media keep up with the Facebooks and the Googles and the Netflixes of the world?
Yes, and in my article, I'm actually saying that if we could try to regulate international players a bit more. I mean, the guys' media budgets are restricted to the Facebooks and the Googles.
Yeah.
And what about consumer data protection laws? Because they're using our data to make revenues for themselves, right? And where is this money going? It's not staying in South Africa. It's going international, which is affecting our GDP. From good GDP growth,
it's sounding very protectionist, because the reverse is also true. We can go into America, we can go into the UK, we can go into China and do what they're doing to us if we develop those platforms.
South Africa is a developing economy, and a developing economy is a victim of first world countries because they have advanced technology and global politics where they make trade deals that we're going to be substituted to issues like the Facebook and Google. But what I'm actually saying to him is try to regulate our industry a bit more.
Yeah.
If we could let small business, help the small business guys with transformation, right?
Okay.
The small entrepreneurs.
So do you think transformation might be an answer to this? And what
from
would
a point of
transformation
view
look
of
like?
a small business, from a point of view of trying to assist media companies that are small, community radio stations, community TV stations, community publishers, guys that have their own websites are trying to publish good content, you know. So if I'm a Soweto publisher, a Soweto newspaper that is online, and the story that broke out about somebody dying in the neighborhood, if I'm supported, I can cater for that audience.
Yes.
But if all the money is just going in one direction, what about the others?
Yeah.
And then also has unemployment. Right.
This sounds a bit like taxi drivers and Uber fighting technology. Let's get your take on this, because it is an interesting one. You know, we've seen publications disappearing. I picked up the Sunday World just now, but we may not see it again in the near future. Community radio stations come and go with regular monotony. Is it just a function of the world we live in, or should we protect the industry in the way that Nkateko was saying?
I'm certainly for regulation, but I am absolutely against over-regulation of the industry. I think there are challenges in the way that the various media platforms are able to generate revenue, and this is largely because there has been a shift in media ad spend. It didn't disappear, and I agree with you, Peter. They just moved from traditional media platforms to the digital media platforms. If you look at countries like the UK, for example, a huge bulk of media advertising has almost moved completely off the traditional media as radio, TV, and has moved more to the digital media platforms. And I think here in South Africa, we do have an opportunity to get ready for a time like that, because access to internet still benefits the very, very rich. So we still have a lot of people that depend absolutely only on the SABC, for example, to get their information and their stories, and depend on their community radio stations to be able to be in touch with the issues that are happening there. But the question is, while we are looking to the president or anyone else that's has influence and power in the industry, what are we as media practitioners and media owners doing to ensure that we create a sustainable media environment? If printed newspapers are not working out anymore, have we considered how we can then generate revenues using a platform like Press Reader and using the online platforms? How do we make money out of those? And if you look at platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and these are partly owned. So if you are the SABC and you have a Twitter account, you own that particular timeline and content that's there, but you don't own the platform. So your ability to generate revenue is limited. However, is there an opportunity to have, for the SABC, for example, to have a conversation with Twitter and say, can we share revenue? Can there be a revenue partnership that we have here? And I think these are the conversations that we need to start having. And
develop our own things. China is unashamedly doing that. WeChat and so on and so forth. They've said, listen, you guys keep your Facebook, your other networks. So why don't we develop our own
talent? I mean, talent is a critical issue. In our industry, whose talent comes from the prestigious schools, AAA, Vega, IMM, or Boston, or the universities. But what about the marketing graduates, the N6 from a TVET college? What about them? You sort of ring-fence the industry when it comes to talent. The talent skill set is not really open to anybody that can actually do the job.
But I'm going to jump in here because, again, we're in danger of acting like victims. If you come out of a TVET college in a digital environment, I'm seeing young people put up YouTube things, put up all kinds of marketing. You don't need to get permission from anybody. You just have to go to the clients with a great idea and say, I've just qualified, we've got great ideas, this is what we can do. The way you're talking, you're almost suggesting that these big ad agencies have to create space for young black talent.
They should increase their requirement criteria, because their requirement criteria only specifically looks at certain conditions, like what school you studied. Well, it's not about the school, it's about the talent.
Bypass them.
Because that's why the talent and the skill set remains a critical issue. We can't be like the Chinese. If from school we're learning coding. Right? If we learn how to code from a young age, we can be like the Chinese and the global pioneer companies. But we need to start at that point and need to open up the talent skill set. If we keep talent closed to only specific criteria, right, we're only going to get the same. And if we keep on getting the same, we're not going to improve.
And we have to change that by bypassing it. That's my feeling. I think if we're trying to fix something that's unfixable, leave it alone. Move on to something else. Last word on this.
For me, there is a way that President Cyril Ramaphosa can help us as a media, and this is by strengthening organizations like the MDDA, because that plays a big role in the community media space, both radio and print publications. If those are empowered, then we're moving a step forward, and we saw those organizations almost kind of like really become paralyzed. And you have the GCIS, which played a big role in the development of community radio in the country. So if President Ramaphosa focuses on strengthening those organizations and empowering them, I think we would be in a better place as the media in trying to achieve our agenda of transformation. So I think there is room to play from a legislative point of view, but I think also the responsibility lies on us. We just have to make it work.
So think out of the box, eh? That's what my feeling is. All right, but okay, we'll leave that for the time being. When we come back after the break, we'll start taking a look at your newspapers and what's happening in the media, not just here, but also abroad. We are going to Malawi. Stay with us.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Right, it's that part of the show where we start taking a look at what's in the newspapers, and we start with a feature that we started a while ago now, and that's taking us to another country on the continent to get a sense of what's happening further afield. And today we're in Malawi, where governance and human rights activist Undule Mwakasungula joins us now from the capital, Lilongwe. Undule, thanks very much for joining us on Media Monitor, and before we get into the discussion of what's in the newspapers, let's talk a little bit about the elections that took place in this past week. We believe that President Mutharika looks like he's in the lead, but a lot of questions being asked about the fairness.
Yeah, it's very interesting in terms of how the results have come out. There have been a very, very close results in terms of the contenders. The incumbent, President Mutharika, and the opposition political party, the Malawi Congress Party. Yeah, and what I can say right now is a standoff because the main opposition party, Malawi Congress Party, has gone to court to get an injunction to stop the Malawi Electoral Commission not to announce the results until some anomalies has been addressed.
Yeah,
so that's where we are now as a nation, and everybody is looking forward to the results actually. So everybody's anxious.
Yeah.
What is going to come out? But as the Malawi Congress Party, we're going to court.
Yeah.
The former ruling Democratic Party, which the party was leading, and the President Arthur Mutharika was leading by a very small percentage.
All right.
So this is what we have right now in Malawi.
All right. So what else? What else is in the papers? I mean, the elections must be dominating in this to and froing, but there must be other issues that are in your Sunday papers, weekend papers.
Yeah, of course, the papers they are full of just elections. You know, I have one paper right now, which is the Sunday Nation, which talks about the courts as a heading. Court ties make hands. He's talking about the injunction, the presidential results, releasing the results, and it's all full about election disputes. So it's all about elections in the papers, actually.
And is that the only thing that's fascinating the Malawians? I would imagine that there are a lot of other things that they're concerned with, but I suppose they want to know who's going to be president.
Yes, I think right now Malawians are more concerned who's going to be the next president. Yes, we have so many other issues which we can say we are concerned. Developmental issues, infrastructure issues, poverty issues, corruption issues. But what is concerning right now Malawians is they want to know who is going to take them, who is going to address their problems. Is it the current incumbent to continue? They already started, or we need to start from a new chapter? For the time being, they just want to know who is going to be the president who is going to govern this nation.
Do you think Malawians are going to trust the result, whatever that might be when it comes out? Is the Independent Electoral Commission actually independent in Malawi, or do they fear that the incumbent might rig, or that the opposition will always cry foul because they lost?
I think, to me, having a fair analysis, the Malawi Electoral Commission has really managed these elections professionally. They have been transparent. They have been very consultative. I think they have nothing to hide, actually.
All right, okay.
But I think from the the opposition has been campaigning with a message of bringing fear to the people that the elections are going to be rigged. Now I feel that because they haven't managed to achieve in terms of maybe defeating the incumbent president. Now they would like to console their supporters by saying that the elections are going to be rigged. Now we lost. Now we suspect that the elections have been rigged. But to me, I don't think there haven't been any rigging, actually. But
all right.
Looking at how the Electoral Commission managed these elections, they have been very transparent.
Okay.
Very consultative, very involving. So the rigging issue, it's all coming from a cry of opposition who maybe have not achieved what they wanted to achieve.
All right, Ndule, I'm sure that the ruling party will be very pleased with your analysis. Thanks so much indeed for your insights and sharing your thoughts about what's happening in Malawi. Thanks so much, Ndule. All right.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Okay. All right, so that was our correspondent, not our correspondent, but a human rights activist in Malawi sharing with us what's happening in the papers there, and mostly about the elections that have just taken place in Malawi. And in fact, the Malawians were represented yesterday at President Ramaphosa's inauguration. But let's come back home, and my guests are going to help us wade through the front pages of the papers and some of the stories inside. Let me start with you, Nkateko. What story grabbed your attention? Which paper?
The cat corner Cyril.
That's the Sunday Times, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the whole issue of the deputy president, if you could elect a woman, or Lindy could be a woman that he can elect, just to boost the confidence of gender inequality in South Africa. And the leadership skills that women carry would be critical for our country.
So, Shweshwe, the challenge that he has, of course, is that the ANC has set these precedents that are not constitutional, that are not written in law, but there seems to be an unwritten rule. If you're the president of the party, you become president of the country. If you're deputy president of the party, you're deputy president of... Could this be an opportunity for him to reset those, or is there too much to lose inside the party?
Peter, there's a lot of, issues at play here. The ANC's deputy president can still become the deputy president of the country, even though he's not a member of parliament. Because the president can appoint, I think, 2 members of cabinet who are not members of parliament. Now, if that happens, it means that President Cyril Ramaphosa only has one position to appoint someone who's not a member of cabinet. And Didi Mabuza still remains the deputy president. And I don't know what's going to happen. I think politics have become very fluid in the country, and nothing is obvious anymore. So there's a lot of questions around why would Didi not agree to be sworn in, because we know that the ANC's stance is innocent until proven guilty. And now the Integrity Commission seems to have been playing this very big role that has influenced his decision to not want to be sworn in as a member of parliament. So I think there's more questions than there's answers, but President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to appoint a cabinet. It's his decision to make, but there's a lot of influence from within the ANC
it's interesting.
of who that
and I suspect as well, because they're saying that this cabinet, the number of people in cabinet are going to be reduced from 72 to 32, and that's to more than half disappearing. Chances are, if the previous instances to be taken into account, those that were ministers who are not ministers now are probably going to resign as MPs because their benefits change as a result of their change in their position. So he'll probably have a lot more seats to deal with in terms of giving out to new cabinet members. But do you think the media has dealt with this properly? Because we don't know where this came from about Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma becoming deputy president, that he might have fallen out with Lindiwe Sisulu. All of this stuff was doing the rounds, and I'm just wondering, where did it come from, and were we being naughty as the media just to fuel the fanfare?
Floating an issue there was, look, when you look at Nasrec, what happened in Nasrec was a sign that Nkosazana Zuma is not friends with Cyril, right? So that's trying to mention that will they work together if he appoints her as a deputy president. So it's trying to analyze that and see that that angle and seeing who would you really elect. And trimming down the cabinet will work best for our fiscal consolidation, because that means that we are now reducing costs. And when looking at the recent SMP outlook, rated as stable because of Cyril now being officially elected president, which is good for our macroeconomy.
You're all for the economy, I can see it.
I'm all for the growth of the country.
But I want to know about this story, because it really has done the rounds this past week, and the media has helped fuel this. And I wonder if the media is not being used by lobby groups inadvertently. We might be thinking we've got an inside source, but maybe they're just lobbying for their person to be front and center.
I think so. There will be a lot of speculations in the media, especially when there's no official voice that's coming through. The people who are touted to be deputy president and coming forward to say, no, I am not. I'm waiting for the president to appoint me. If he appoints me, then I will become the deputy president. And I think it just puts a lot of pressure on President Cyril Ramaphosa to appoint this deputy president so that we can end all speculation. But I don't want to say the media is being naughty. I think in the absence of the official voices, there will be a lot of speculations because we would have spoken to
but what can
analysts.
they say?
It's what can they say? But it's someone's voice. Someone has raised the issue, and we have to discuss the issues and deal with them. And whether in the end, then they are then proven to have not been true, it doesn't mean the conversations had not happened at all.
All right. So will the announcement be today or tomorrow?
I don't know. I hope the announcement is soon.
Nobody knows.
If it was President Zuma, it would have been 11 o'clock tonight. All right. So thanks so much. You guys have been great guests. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing your thoughts with us on the program. Thank you for being great editors.
Thank you.
All right. So you at home, thank you so much for joining us for Media Monitor. We'll be back at the same time next week with more of the same. And don't forget to contact us via our Twitter handle at SA Media Monitor. Share your thoughts with us and we'll share them with the world. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.